You're watching the Wellness Hour Consumer Report. I'm Randy Alvarez. Today's topic, what you need to know about bankruptcy. According to my first guest, there are tens of thousands of people in San Diego that are dealing with a lot of debt, and they don't know their options. He's here to answer our questions. Doan Law Center, Mike Doan. Mike, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Randy.
Now, we should mention, you are the busiest attorney when it comes to bankruptcy in all of San Diego.
We are busy. I wouldn't say the busiest attorney, the busiest law firm.
Okay.
There's about 10 attorneys in our firm.
How do they measure that, by the way, that you're number one?
Well, it's based on the number of filings.
Okay.
There's probably about 1,000 filings a month in San Diego County, and we handle anywhere between 100 to 150 of those between our 5 offices. And it keeps us busy. That's all we do. We don't do anything else, just bankruptcy and dealing with creditors, dealing with people's debts. It's a depidemic out there is what they say. And it's a matter of taking care of that debt and helping people out and letting them move forward with a fresh start.
Now, you have a very large office, in Carlsbad, but you have offices spread all over,
That's right.
I guess, California here.
Throughout Southern California, we've got about 10 offices. We've got 5 locally here in San Diego. We've got Carlsbad, Escondido, downtown San Diego, Chula, Vista, and La Mesa. And between those 5 offices, it keeps us very busy. Not a lot of people talk about bankruptcy. Not a lot of people will bring it up, but it's something that a lot of people have, and it's just not talked about.
So there are a lot of people in San Diego filing for bankruptcy?
Over 1,000 a month are filing. But that's really just a small fraction of the number of people that are out there with debt.
Okay.
You would be surprised how many people are out there with debt that aren't filing, that actually should be filing, because their life would be so much better off.
You say they wait too long. We talked on the telephone.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Usually I find the client coming in after they've exhausted their assets. They may have gone through their retirement account. They may have refinanced their house, spent their kids' savings for college. And these are all assets that they could have protected in the bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is really amazing. There's so much you can do with it in terms of getting rid of debt, getting a fresh start, and rebuilding your credit. A lot of people think there's a lot of taboo with bankruptcy, and it's actually the complete opposite. It's like there's truths and then there's myths of bankruptcy. And a lot of people are caught up in the myths, and they need to learn the truths.
So in your practice, you have this trifold approach. What is that?
Right. There's actually 3 different stages that we take a client through in a bankruptcy compared to what most firms will do.
Okay.
That first stage is actually helping the client before we file. And there's a lot that goes in there. Well, when the client walks through the door, we let them know that that's it. You're not paying any more debt. You're going to stop paying all your creditors, and we're going to deal with them.
Okay.
All right? The creditor, once we're retained, cannot speak with you. We send out cease and desist letters.
Like right away?
Immediately. The day of retention. The day we're retained, we pull credit, merges in our bankruptcy software, and goes out that day to the creditors. Puts them on notice of representation. Now, there's a lot of state and federal laws that then triggers, which makes it unlawful for them to communicate with our clients. They can't call them, they can't write them, email, fax, whatever. If they do, it could be worth up to $500 a call. And in a lot of cases, it actually pays for the bankruptcy. It's not uncommon for a client to come into our office, put down $100 to retain us, and the next thing you know, we have these counterclaims against the creditors who are not following the law. And then they don't even need to file a bankruptcy, end up with cash in their pocket, and the debt's gone.
So it's $100 to get started with your firm, and you say that you have an attorney that all she does all day long is sues these creditors that are harassing people at work and at home, on their cell phones, et cetera. Is that correct?
That's right, Randy. We keep her really busy. Because with all these letters going out, you can imagine the numbers. We're filing 150 cases a month. Your typical client has 10 to 40 creditors. That's a lot of creditors out there that are potentially going to break the law. And so if they do contact our clients, Karen's there. Karen's there, ready to go after them. And so we file countersuits, lawsuits, claims in the bankruptcy court. There's so many different laws that can trigger a violation with these creditors that in a lot of cases, the bankruptcy can be free.
Okay, so that's the first step.
That's the first step.
All right.
The second step begins once we file the case. All right. And that takes place after all the worksheets are completed, all the paperwork's brought in. And once the case is processed and the client sits down with us, reviews it all, and signs off. Then we file the case. Then we take the case from point A to point B. until the client gets their discharge. That could be in either Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. That's what your typical law firm will do in San Diego County. But that's not everything that we think belongs in a bankruptcy.
Okay.
You've got the pre-petition work, you've got the bankruptcy, and then you've got the post-petition work. So
after it's filed, after it's done.
Yeah, typically your Chapter 7 is going to last 4 months, at which point you'll get a discharge. Your Chapter 13 will last 3 to 5 years. It's a payment plan. And we can talk about that later. There's different chapters for different people. But then once discharge is entered, then what? Then what happens? And then upon discharge, then that's the second part of the equation. It's a two-sided coin that I tend to think of any bankruptcy as. First part is get rid of that debt, right?
Okay.
Well, once the debt's gone, then what do? A lot of people think they're done. That's it. They're toast. They're history. And that's the furthest thing from the truth.
So do people think that, though?
You'd be very
Because it's
surprised.
very difficult to get credit after a bankruptcy. Isn't that true?
And that's what your typical person thinks.
And that's not true, you're saying?
And that's completely false.
Interesting.
In most cases, it's actually easier to get credit after filing than it was before. And in most cases, I'm dealing with your typical person that comes in that's been struggling to pay debt. It's been sitting there for a while. They've been bleeding out money each month. The debt's not going anywhere. But the only thing that is happening is their credit report's actually going down. Their FICO score is going down. And so with the discharge, that's where it gets exciting. That's where the credit actually changes. Your typical person will come in with a low credit score due to the defaulted payments, the high debt-to-credit ratio that's outstanding. But upon discharge, that's all erased. It's a zero balance.
Okay.
And since your credit score is driven about 1/3 off your debt-to-credit ratio, we typically see an immediate rise in the credit reports.
Okay.
That FICO score will typically go from 500 to 550. It's almost a 50-point jump, depending where you're at. Now, good credit goes down, but in most of our cases, our clients don't have good credit to start with. Mm-hmm. And so 80%.
What else do you offer, though? Okay, so when it's done, you say...
Well, okay, so once we get that discharge, it's all about rebuilding that credit, all right? And so the bankruptcy discharge is just one component of that, all right? If you want to rebuild credit, if you want your credit score up, the first part is get rid of the debt. You got to get rid of the debt somehow.
Okay.
You got to settle it out. You got to pay it off. You file a bankruptcy. It's the same thing. You get rid of the debt with a bankruptcy. The debt's gone. That's an immediate 50-point jump in the credit score. Then everything turns on what you do afterwards. And we've teamed up with a company, 720 Credit Score, and they will take you from that credit score, whatever it is, up to the 700s in about a 12 to 24 month process.
Interesting.
It's about a 3-month course. It's virtual. But I'm not aware of any other firms in San Diego that offer that. So you've got your pre-petition cease and desist letters to get rid of harassing phone calls, peace of mind to the client, no more payments. You've got the bankruptcy that gets you from point A to point B, gets rid of all the debt, gives you your peace of mind. And then you've got your post-petition repair. Let's get that credit report back up. So
this is part of your services, though?
It's a trifold approach, yes.
Okay, now we should mention, because we talked on the telephone, I said we may or may not mention this on the interview, but where do you stand as far as pricing with other attorneys? And you also told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that typical bankruptcy attorney handles the filing, and that's it. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah. They'll.
So is it a lot more to go
with our firm as opposed to somebody else?
Yeah.
No, actually, we have a fee guarantee. We'll beat another firm's fees by $100. That's our fee guarantee.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, the fees shouldn't be driving the bankruptcy. All right.
So you're less. I mean, you're guaranteeing you're going to be less than other attorneys.
We have a fee guarantee. Yeah. I mean,
interesting.
And we tell our clients, if you want to shop, go ahead, shop around, bring in the written fee quote. We'll beat it by $100. That shouldn't be your decision on
for
filing.
more services, as you say.
Well, they're not going to give more services. They don't do the pre-petition stuff. They don't do the post-petition stuff. They're just going to try to file the case to get you from point A to point B. Okay. And most attorneys will do that, but you got to watch out. Not everybody has a lot of practice. You got a lot of people straight out of law school trying to learn the ropes of the trade.
Is there that much to it, though, respectfully? Because you say you studied under the guru, I'm paraphrasing slightly, of bankruptcy. But is there really that much to it? So many nuances? Or?
90% of practitioners will do that. They'll get you from point A to point B. But then if you really dive into bankruptcy law, it gets exciting. There's so much you can do.
Would you say you're more aggressive than most, by the way?
Very aggressive. Very aggressive. We got a reputation for that.
Okay.
And maybe that's one of the reasons why our cases sail through so easily. They don't want to mess with somebody that has sued them multiple times. They want their easy cases. They want to file a proof of claim with an attorney that isn't going to contest it. All right. But there's so many ways to contest proof of claims. These are claims that are filed in the bankruptcy for Chapter 13 cases where a creditor wants to get paid. All right. But there's so many ways to contest that, and if you contest it right, not only does the client not pay our attorney fees, but we get rid of the claim altogether, which means the client pays less money over the long run.
So for people just tuning in, okay, we're talking about what you need to know if you're considering bankruptcy, which my question I want to ask you, which is when should you do it, okay, and who's a candidate.
Sure.
But if somebody's just tuning in, okay, so if you're the number one guy, you offer probably just about, and I'm not siding with you, I'm just asking the questions, but based on what you said, you offer more services than everybody else. You have a lot of experience, probably in bankruptcy more than just about anybody here. And for $100 to start, right, with you, $100 to start, that your firm will stop all the calls, all the creditor calls.
That's right. $100 is all it takes. And really, that's not even our fees. What we do with the $100 is we pay for a tri-merge credit report. We download all the creditors into our bankruptcy software and immediately generate cease and desist letters, which go out to the creditors and forbid them from contacting our clients. So that's immediate relief for our clients. All right, a lot of them are still paying, or they're getting harassing phone calls, 10, 20, 30 calls a day. That all has to stop. If it doesn't stop, it's worth up to $500 a call. And when you get 30, 50 calls, 70 calls, and you get TCPA violations up to $500 a call, these cases add up. And we bring them in state and federal court, and they usually settle out, but they could be worth $30,000, $50,000, $80,000 sometimes. And well, when a client gets that, in many instances, they don't even need to file a bankruptcy. So that $100 gets us on board and pretty much creates an environment as if the bankruptcy's already taken place. Now, there's some exceptions. If there's a wage garnishment or a bank levy or a foreclosure, we have to act quick. Okay. Because the $100 doesn't file the case. It just gets protection from harassment and stages counterclaims against the creditors. But we then can offer a payment plan for our clients in Chapter 7. We can file a 13 with very little attorney fees up front and get most of our fees as they make their monthly payments.
Okay.
But the $100 pretty much gets us on board 100%. And then everything turns on processing the case, getting you from point A to point B, getting rid of that debt, and then rebuilding that credit at the end.
So in San Diego, your average case, we talk, is like $3,000 to $5,000 a month W-2 earner. They're employed by somebody, and they just have a lot of debt that's killing them. And you say their life can be miserable. You say that they haven't even purchased anything for themselves for years. I mean, tell me the typical scenario, what they tell you.
Well, the typical client we have that comes in makes, as an individual, under $50,000 a year. They might have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in debt. And they've been struggling with this debt for a long time. Years, if not decades, believe it or not. And it's not going anywhere. It's sitting there, and they're just bleeding money out, making the minimum payments, and the debt level is pretty much the same. Let's face it, if you make your minimum payments over on a 24% interest credit card, it's going to take about 43 years to get that thing paid off. So it's not uncommon that we have somebody coming in, they've been paying for 5 years, and the debt level is as it was 5 years earlier.
So like $800 a month in minimum payments they're paying.
$800 a month.
And they're making $3,000 or $4,000 a month.
Do the math.
This is huge.
Yeah, thousands and thousands a year. So
it's their ego? Is it their ego or pride, I should say? Because obviously at one point they had excellent credit, and now they're just...
It is, Randy. It's coming to terms and acceptance. Maybe it's not how they were brought up. They feel guilt.
So what do you say to somebody that has those feelings, that's watching this?
I tell them, you got to put yourself first. I mean, who are you indebted to? Who are you in bondage to? I mean, bankruptcy actually comes from the Bible, and they refer to it as bondage. But you got to put yourself first. If you're not putting yourself first and you're not productive, then what good are you to anybody else in the rest of society? So if you're sitting there and just bleeding that debt away and it's not going anywhere, what good are you to your wife or your spouse or your kids or your employer? You're stressed out. You're probably incurring medical bills because of your stress, because it has its way into other illnesses.
So do you see transformations where they come in completely, stressed out, humiliated in a way, and then when it's all done, all of a sudden they're walking tall, standing tall?
Absolutely.
Really?
They come in devastated. I have Kleenexes in my office. At the end of our consultation, it's like this huge 1,000-pound gorilla has been lifted off their back. All this debt that they didn't know they could just wipe out is suddenly gone. And it's a sense of relief.
On your website, you have this cartoon, or an illustration, I should say, that describes what people go through. For people that haven't seen that,
right?
Is that accurate?
To the T. It's a whiteboard video. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but it's basically a cartoonish type of stickboard drawing with a hand scratching in words as to what's going on. But basically, it's Bob can't sleep. Bob has debt. It's affecting his family. It's affecting his work. It's affecting every aspect of his life. And then he comes in and he finds out about bankruptcy, and he realizes that everything he's been doing for the last couple of years, he didn't need to do because there's relief. And then towards the end of the video, Bob is happy. Bob can sleep. Bob's family is all happy. Bob is now buying a house. Bob is now buying a car. And so it kind of just dumbs down the process of bankruptcy so that any person can kind of get it like in about 30, 40 seconds of what's going on. But that's what happens.
But tell me this, though. Okay, so there's a lot of people in San Diego. Let's just suppose that they have a 401k, and they're, this $40,000, $50,000 a year earner, and their 401k is over $100,000.
Yeah.
It's not, because, help me understand, it doesn't seem worth it to go bankrupt over $30,000 worth of debt and then lose your 401k.
Right, and that's what a lot of people do. They'll struggle trying to pay off that debt, and they'll tap into that 401k or another asset, and they don't have to do that. That's their savings. They need that for later years.
Is that protected, though?
It's not only protected, the 401k is not even considered part of the bankruptcy estate. When you file, technically all assets are pulled into this estate. There's certain assets that are not even considered part of the estate.
They can't go after the 401k?
So the 401k is completely protected.
Interesting.
You could have $1 million in it, completely protected. And so a lot of people don't realize that. They think, oh, I have too many assets. If I file bankruptcy, I'm going to lose it. No. Unless you know the exemptions and what's part and not part of the estate, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You need to talk to a bankruptcy attorney and realize what you can protect and what you can't protect. Because I get so many people that come in years later, they've spent down all their assets, and they could have protected all this. They could have been debt-free and have a positive balance sheet with all these assets that go through the bankruptcy unaffected. You can have up to $175,000 of equity in a house. It's protected. Nobody can touch that.
But after and I'm skipping around here, but after the bankruptcy, 10 years before you can buy a house? Is it more difficult to buy a house?
No. There's programs out to get, you can buy a house in a year. There's FHA programs within a year after filing Chapter 7 and in Chapter 13. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of truths and myths about bankruptcy, and one of them being people think you can't get credit again, ever again, and that's so false.
Do you hear that, by the way, from people?
All the time.
Is that a misconception?
It's a misconception. It's a misconception. There's bankruptcy lists, Randy. All these credit card companies subscribe to bankruptcy lists. They want to know when the debtor's getting a discharge because they're trying to solicit their credit again. Capital One. If you had a Capital One credit card and you bankrupt on them, they're going to send you a "we want you back" solicitation for credit. And that's just because you got to understand the bankruptcy laws. Once you file a Chapter 7, you can't file again for 8 years, and you're debt-free. So in the creditor's eyes, you're a great credit risk again.
Interesting.
What can they do about the bankruptcy? You already bankrupted, but now you've got this new party in the market that is going to pay because they can't do a bankruptcy. They have no other debt, so they have the ability to pay. And they're going to throw a high interest rate on it and hope they don't pay it off every month. But of course, the trick is you pay it off every month, there is no interest. So there's credit cards immediately after filing. You can buy a house 1 to 2 years out. You've got FHA, VA, conventional financing. You can buy a car 30 days into a bankruptcy, probably looking about a 12% interest rate. But there's more credit after filing than with most of our clients who have a huge debt load and a low credit score.
When should they do something? I mean, is somebody watching this, and for the sake of time, when should somebody file? Like what are the signs? I mean, is there a formula here?
There's no set formula, but I usually tell my clients, if you can't pay off that debt in 2 years, then file, get it over with, and get your credit rebuilt. Because let's put yourself out 2 years. If you're going to struggle for the next 2 years and be in the same boat you're at, with possibly even lower credit score, and a ton of debt versus filing bankruptcy now, being debt-free, saving assets that you didn't deplete, and having a credit score in the 700s, it's a no-brainer. The problem is just teaching that whole educational process to our clients.
See, the problem is, on the phone, you were saying that you get them when they're down and out, that you'd love to get them, a couple years before they waste all that money on trying to catch up, which they're never going to do.
Yeah, because they're wasting assets. They're depleting 401k accounts, or they're taking out money from their house. But they're also spending. They're spending a good chunk of their paycheck each month, and the debt's not going anywhere. Imagine if you stopped spending that, and now you use that money for savings, for things that you need, for medical,
or like dental, a vacation
vision,
or something.
Vacation. Right? I tell my clients filing bankruptcy is actually very patriotic in a lot of cases.
It is?
Yes.
How so?
If you're saddled with a few creditors, you got a few bankers that are getting bonuses and huge interest off your debt, and they're sucking you dry, then what good are you for the rest of society? If the consumer doesn't spend, our economy collapses. Think about it. If we all were just tapped into a few creditors, and we weren't going out and having dinner, taking vacations, tipping somebody, all these little mom and pop companies fall apart. There's no spending. The economy collapses. So by filing bankruptcy, by getting rid of the bondage of those few creditors, and then using that money and pumping it back into the economy, it's actually a good thing.
So it's become mainstream. I mean, you told me that it's become mainstream, and very famous people, even presidents, have filed bankruptcy.
Absolutely.
So it's less taboo than it used to be.
Yes. 30, 40 years ago, it was different. You walked into a bank, you knew your banker. It was personal. Now you're a number in the system. Things have changed. Things have evolved. But what's very interesting, Randy, is the roots of bankruptcy. I mean, it actually comes thousands of years ago. It comes from the Bible, Deuteronomy. And
bankruptcy's in the Bible.
And it's evolved over the years. And in fact, our founding fathers put it in the Constitution.
It's in the Constitution?
They put it in the Constitution before our Bill of Rights. Bankruptcy was so important, with Commerce Clause and everything, that it's in there before your freedom of speech and religion.
That you're entitled to what? A relief of debt every...
That Congress shall make a uniform set of bankruptcy laws throughout the nation. That was in there before the Bill of Rights. So it's our very foundation to have bankruptcy laws. And it's a good thing. I mean, what good are you if some countries, they throw you in jail if you don't pay? What good are you if you're in jail? I mean, how are you productive if you're in jail? The whole idea with bankruptcy is to get a fresh start, get rid of the debt, be productive again in society.
We're out of time, and this is great information. If they go to your website, they can learn more. But take me through the process. Do they ever get to see you if somebody calls?
They see me. Well, it depends which office you're in.
Okay.
There's a lot of attorneys in our firm. Most likely they'll see a Doan. Okay. There's 6 of us Doans. We're California's largest family of attorneys. But most likely they'll meet with one of us. And we'll sit down with them and we'll explore. We'll explore all their options. I mean, there's a lot of non-bankruptcy options.
What's the fee for that visit?
It's a free consultation.
Interesting.
It's a free consultation. But we explore non-bankruptcy options like debt settlement, countersuits. We explore bankruptcy options, Chapter 7, Chapter 13, or a combination of the two. No single person is the same as somebody else. Everybody's got their own unique finances. But what's interesting is most people qualify that don't think they qualify. I get a lot of clients saying, "Oh, I make too much money." Really? How are you married? Do you have kids? No, but I make 50 grand a year. You're presumed to qualify. A family of 5, if they make 100,000 a year, they're presumed to qualify. So there's different presumptions.
For a 7, we're talking about.
For a 7, or well, you can do a 13 too.
Okay.
And there's different reasons to file different chapters, but you can qualify in most instances where somebody might think they won't.
What's the hardest thing, and we really are out of time, but what's the hardest thing for you to get across to people about this? Maybe one of your frustrations? That it's easier than it is? That it's
probably the toughest thing to get across is that they're actually going to be better off with the bankruptcy than without it. The biggest decision is coming to terms and deciding to file. Once the clients decide to file, then they're on board. and then there's never buyer's remorse. I've done this 20 years, 6,000 cases. I've never had a client regret it. The only regret I've ever seen is, why didn't I come here 2 years ago?
Have they ever said that? Do they really say that?
All the time. All the time.
Like, why did I do
could have
this?
saved this. Do you know how many times a day I say hindsight's 20/20? All the time. They're always saying, why didn't I do this earlier?
Yeah, where were you, Mike Doan?
Exactly. So, you know, if the message could get out there that you don't have to toss and turn all night. You can get rid of this debt. You can move forward.
And $100 gets you started with you. It can.
$100 gets you started. We offer convenient monthly payment plans.
You stop the creditors calling right away. And that's your first mission.
First mission
you take
is
care
of peace of mind.
You get that bankruptcy 7 through as fast as possible, and then you offer aftercare to rebuild their credit, all included.
All included for the same price.
And you have a guarantee of lower prices by $100 than any attorney here in San Diego.
$100 fee guarantee. That's right, Randy.
Good for you. Good for you. And you're number one. Has this always been the philosophy?
We eat, drink, sleep bankruptcy. A lot of attorneys will do family law.
Now, I know you
law.
surf. I know you surf. Do you ever think of bankruptcy while you're surfing? Or is that your one time you don't think about it?
Yeah, when me and my brother's in the water, we refer to that as our boardroom. We've got to have a board meeting.
So you talk about bankruptcy in the water.
That's
Good
our
for you.
board meeting. Yeah, yeah. And we exchange a lot of insightful things about bankruptcy in the water. There's a few things we didn't even talk about, but there's so much you can do with bankruptcy. You can take off second mortgages off a house with a bankruptcy. You can get rid of taxes in a bankruptcy. You can restructure secured debt. You can pay off a house in 5 years with a cram down on interest rate. It's amazing what you can do with bankruptcy laws. It's just unknown. Not a lot of people know about it.
So you were telling me if you're making payments on taxes that are, 3 years old, you can wipe those out.
They've got to meet a few tests, but typically 80-90% of the clients meet those tests. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to thank you for coming to the show. Very interesting. Good stuff. Yeah. And if they want to learn more, I guess they could call.
They can call.
And set up a time for a free consultation.
Absolutely. Or go on our website. Just email us. Yeah, we've got an online interview form. We've got 24/7 monitoring. So yes, absolutely.
Good. I'm glad you came on our business report because I think hopefully a lot of people will be helped and they'll give you a call. So thanks again.
Thank you, Randy.
You've been watching the Wellness Hour Consumer Report. I'm Randy Alvarez. We'll see you next time.